What's going on, everybody? This is the Triangle Button Podcast, and with me today is Caleb, my good friend. We've been we've been friends since like grade 5, ever since public school, and all the way to university. So I'm actually going to let Caleb take the stand here. Tell the audience about yourself, Caleb.
I'm glad you almost said we've been together for almost 10 years. That's almost good to
Yeah,
I'm thought of that way. But yeah, I'm a good friend of Michael's. We, oh wait, you're going by Alex, right?
yeah. So it doesn't matter. Honestly, it's okay. Let's let the news out. You
Uh,
guys can call me Michael. Alex, middle name. It's all right. Continue, Caleb. You're good.
yeah. I know we grew up in the same town together. We're both university students. And he basically brought me here to talk about zombies and comic books and a bunch of other geeky shit. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, nice. Well, just like you were saying, let's talk about some zombies. So, as like most people know, like the Last of Us show has came out very recently, actually, like at the beginning of the year, and they've released 2 episodes thus far. Now, we're not going to get into like too much detail on the first episode, but that second episode, though, what were your thoughts on that?
I Going back even like a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
I was skeptical that Pedro Pascal would be the ideal Joel. I knew him from the Wonder Woman 1984 meme of saying, "Life is good, but it can be
It could be
better."
better.
And I thought, is this really Joel from The Last of Us? Is this really our, like, our strong, stoical, complex character? But I have to say that he is doing a good job of bringing a realism to the character and capturing the essence of Joel, but also putting a new spin on him. So I have to say, episode 2 I really liked. For that's when I started to realize, okay, this really is the character that that I appreciate from the video games, and I can definitely see I can relate to both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the rest of the episode, what hasn't already been said, it's has beautiful set pieces. It
Mm-hmm.
it really encapsulates what made Last of Us great, which is that subversion of expectations, in that the opening episode and the opening of that game are so bleak and set up such a dark, grim, apocalyptic hellscape in Joel's origin story. And as you meet Ellie and as you venture out into the wider world, the subversion isn't that there's some dark surprise out there, but that it's actually strangely beautiful. This
Mm-hmm.
sort of apocalyptic desert, and that in that death and that tragedy and that destruction, there's almost like a new beginning or a rebirth of sorts for nature to sort of come in and take over these cities. And without spoiling the game, I think that corresponds very well to what the characters are going through at this point. So I really like that. The images, those iconic Last of Us images they have in the new episode of grass covering what used to be city streets, or a vine stretching across, decayed skyscrapers. So I have to say, yeah, I really like what they're doing with Joel's character so far. I really like the beautiful atmosphere, and I also like that we got to see more of Ellie and really see Bella Ramsey shine as the annoying little teenager that we know and love from the games.
Yeah, literally. Well,
Well,
like I agree. Like Pedro Pascal, I will say, like at first, I was like, okay, I can see him in this role, but I was a little like skeptical, like you were saying. Honestly, like me, I was watching like any type of video, trying to get any information on when they were filming this.
yeah,
Even when they got like the one photo of the back shot when it was just like Pedro Pascal, like in the iconic green shirt, and Bella Ramsey and like the sweater and everything, looking at like the pile of like plane that was scattered across the earth, right? And I don't know, I like ever since I saw that, I became obsessed. But that trailer, you remember, like there was just that one line, "You don't know what loss is," and then just hearing that, it just sealed it for me.
it did.
And oh, sorry, you go, man, you go.
I just said it did. No, I'm just agreeing with
Oh,
you. It absolutely sealed the deal.
yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was just something else. I just really loved like seeing him in that role. The first episode, okay, yeah, you know what? We're gonna talk about the first episode. I don't know, just like seeing like how like even like as a father, did you find that he was a little more like? you saw their relationship, but they were still kind of closed off. Even like when you saw like him and Sarah, like they were like obviously father daughter, but he seemed a little more like you know yeah, don't worry about that. We got to get going. Like he was already kind of like that. Maybe it's just because like that's just who he is. So he's staying really real to his character. I don't know. What did you think about that?
I think there's I think it plays well to his character
Mm,
that there's something realistic about Joel becoming this cold, shut down, closed off man,
mm,
because it's not that he was person it's not that he was one person and necessarily that the loss of his daughter made him into a completely different person. It's that he was one person and the loss of his daughter enshrined the worst elements of that person as being his realest and most powerful personality attributes. And part
oh,
of that
okay.
is he's a little bit closed off even when he's with Sarah, just because he's kind of a closed off person. Or even when
Mm,
you can see, and it's really interesting. There's a really important moment in both the show and the game, and it's Joel in the passenger seat and Tommy in the driver's seat with Sarah in the back. And the driving past, there's a family on the side of the road saying, "Please stop," and they're waving their hands for help. And Joel's first instinct is keep going, don't stop. And Tommy wants to stop, and Sarah wants to stop, but Joel already has this spark in him of this is my team. Those people are not on my team. They're not part of my family, so they are a secondary concern.
mm.
Not hateful, but he is.
Like
He's
there's
a
a
man.
primary like thing that they need to
Yeah,
focus on. Which
there's
yeah, like
he's
I
compartmentalized. Yeah,
yeah, which I definitely got that sense too. Like you're right. He's very like kind of reclusive just as a person in general. Like, and I feel like after like the events with Sarah, it was just kind of like obviously like elevated because you didn't want to feel that pain anymore. Something I really liked though was that you saw on the bumper sticker ex-military or ex-veteran. You know what I mean? So it kind of shows like why he's so good with like guns, why he's so good with just like fighting, and it kind of gives him a fighting chance like in that world. And yeah, like I agree. I just like seeing them like you were saying, like on the side of the road, like just saying no. Like that was very much like, you're starting to see Joel for like who he kind of is like he's a survival mode, cares about his family. That's it. Like even with the family that was right beside it, like the neighbors are like, oh, you want to have some cookies? Is like, nah, I'm at Atkins. He's
yeah,
just like, but Sarah can go in after school. Like just doesn't want to really deal with this family. So he's very like recluse, like you were saying.
yeah. It's funny when we as people we go through sort of life's different situations. I don't think we invent. Yeah, it's sort of the. I don't think we invent new personalities so much as we reach within ourselves to find the one that best fits our scenario. And for Joel, you could see that in him there was a caring father, and
Hmm.
there was somewhat of a lighthearted, just man of his community. He's sort of just a brother, and there was a soldier. Right? They give you that bumper sticker that there's a man who went into Operation Desert Storm, which I don't know how much you know about that operation, but it was not a, I'll say the most peaceful thing the United States military has done. It was a pretty
Fair.
brutal American attack on Iraq. And it sort of shows they already give that hint to yes, there's the Joel who politely declines a cookie because he's a bit of an introvert. And then that bumper sticker tells us there's also a Joel who knows how to kill people. Just it's right
Yeah,
off
and
the bat.
he's seen some shit. He knows like how to survive and like what is needed to survive.
And we kind of see that in episode one that terrible night that Sarah died was also the night that I think the fun dad kind of died, and all we were
Hmm.
left with was the Desert Storm soldier. And I mean we can say that makes him a bad person, as Chris Stuckman put it. Well, I think that's just what made him an alive person after the 20 years of the apocalypse. Um,
Yeah.
the people who stopped at the side of the road weren't the people who made it after that first night.
Hmm.
Um, so no, I think I do think that it was realistic that he was closed off in the beginning, and then yeah, just sort of that was furthered by the events of The Last of Us.
Yeah, like man, his performance was just like really like well done. Even like changes like with Tommy, like having like a troubled past and like within like the jail and prison system, I thought was a nice change. Cause I don't know, like watching this show, you're right, it subverts expectations really well. So if you like play the games, you don't really need to kind of know the game to know that like this story. It's like it's not like an exact cookie cutter format either. Like you're actually getting like new like details. Like even the beginning when they had like that creepy '60s like documentary of like the interview with the scientist saying like how the cordyceps were going to be the end of the world if it were ever to like evolve with like the heat of the earth, like with global warming, to like match humans and to survive, which you know, even like their change of date, they're originally in 2007 in the video game, which I believe was 2007. And then instead they changed it to 2003, which I think is great on the front of, you want to make it 2023, which is creepy. Like it's the start of the year. Now everybody's like already in fear, like, I just got through 2 years of the pandemic. I don't want to go through another one.
Yeah.
I love how they did that. It's just like, let's just edge in those fears. But what was neat though is that in 2003, that was like the heat wave was like record breaking. The heat was actually like led to like 20,000 deaths or something like that. It was quite kind of huge in America at that time, which makes sense for why like the cordyceps would have evolved to the human form. Like, what do you think about that?
I actually didn't realize there was a heat wave in 2003. I do think that, yeah, that makes sense. With the time change, I think agree that the main reason they did that was probably to make it line up with 2023.
Hmm.
So the apocalyptic future is actually like right now.
Yeah.
In the original game, it was 2013, so they actually brought it back 10 years.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. Thank you. It was 2013.
yeah, the Last of Us takes place in 2033, like the main game, and then
Hmm.
the the sequel takes place I think in 2036. Um, but or yeah, I don't know quite know what it was, but yeah, no, that is. I think the other interesting thing about the change that it allows for him to be that Desert Storm veteran more easily. Like
Hmm.
if you were 36 in 2003, it makes sense that you would have been like a young college kid who was sent off to the 1993 Gulf War. Like that kind
Hmm.
of that timeline lines up. The other interesting change from the game, and I don't know why they made it, but it's worth putting a little sticky note on it, is that in the Last of Us video game, they very clearly in the opening intro they have a bunch of voiceovers of news clippings of different reporters talking about it, and then one of them in a very distinct voice is the president of the United States saying, with the bureaucrats out of power, we can take the steps necessary to handle this pandemic.
Hmm.
And they don't say who that is, but it's the year 2013, and we all know that voice, and it's kind of hinted of like that basically Obama was in power,
Hmm.
which is interesting, I think, because in that sense they sort of it felt, how to put it, um it felt like it was implied that Fedra and the military dictatorship was started by President Obama in like 2013 and it
Okay.
maintained since then. And the original game was fairly, I'd say, apolitical. Like the reason it was Obama wasn't because the game was anti him; it was just because that's when the game was
Wait,
set.
wasn't like Bush administration in 2003?
It was. That's what I was going to get at. In
Oh,
2003,
okay.
the Bush administration. And the Bush administration, there's, I think, a little bit more intrigue there. If I can take this, sorry, making the first episode political.
That's
Uh,
okay. Hey, yeah, you go, man.
the Bush administration is somewhat famous or infamous, depending on your perspective, for its war on terror measures, for having
Hmm.
a very, very strong security state and introducing surveillance, and for having that, what is seen by, I'd say, many, including myself, as um, giving the military a lot more executive power than it had in previous decades.
Yeah.
And possibly most famously is that he made, it's a little more complicated than this, but he essentially made it possible for the United States president and military to declare war without Congress and have like separate, to operate as an independent body. And in this show, I'm wondering, I don't know, it could just be my conspiracy theory political brain, but if they're sort of throwing a nod to that, as that when this pandemic broke out and there were zombies, that the Bush administration sort of fits as one to establish a military security state in that same way. Um,
Well,
I don't know, but that's a
Well,
possibility.
like no, like that theory isn't far off because, like, well, after like not so like 9/11 happened, like all of our security changed, right? Because that's why we refer, you know, pre or post 9/11 because the entire like America changed as a whole to be like tight down on security in every way, shape, or form, and like Bush was like immediately like trying to like, take the tax dollars and like send everybody to a like bomb Afghanistan, which was kind of weird when they did it too, because like we've had this conversation multiple times when they've gone over, they're like these terrorists, they're in Afghanistan, but then they just bombed civilians. Like,
Most of the trained attackers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia, but
mhm.
Saudi Arabia sells the U.S. oil, so they didn't really
Well,
get
that's
the
it.
blame for
That's
that.
exactly what I'm saying, though. Is just like they just went after Afghanistan for the oil, like Saudi Arabia. It's just like what are you doing? And they're just like killing random civilians, and it's like, see, there's actually like a really like cool song that I think you'd like. It's just like the Italian rapper, not Italian. I'm not American from the South. This is an Italian rapper named Vinny Paz, and like in this song where he's like talking about the government, like he's very much a conspiracy theory rapper, which is kind of funny, not gonna lie, is that when he's like the Bush administration, he's like, we kill y'all civilians because you killed our civilians. Where were y'all civilians? Like, in that line, it's just like very much like when they went over there, their intentions were not about trying to like finish the war of terrorism. They used terrorism as a ploy in order to get their own things, to get oil, to get money. That they only wanted to do that. And then by killing civilians, they just labeled everybody in Afghanistan as a villain, which is exactly what they did in like the Vietnam War, right? They just like just put a giant like arrow on like the Vietnamese and said they're all the same, right? Which is like, oh, man, some of these like things in history like pan out that way. But like I agree, if there was going to be somebody in The Last of Us to like make it a secure like security state, like Fedra, the Bush administration makes a whole lot of sense, and he would get a lot of power in it too, because he's like, now that the bureaucrats are out of the way, we're able to focus. Like, I agree with that a lot, and that's kind of how they are. And
Well,
oh, sorry, you
I
go.
was gonna say there's a few interesting wrenches in the Last of Us universe that are interesting. One of
Hmm.
them is that, and I've always sort of maintained, um, I think that like the outbreak of a disease is something that generally, as we've seen in recent years, tends to be something where the left is in favor of more state power to combat it, and the right is in a more anti-statist. I don't know what you want to call it, resistant to those measures. And on the complete reverse of that, usually military situations tend to be
Hmm.
examples where the right isn't in favor of a lot of strong security measures on favor of the government, and the left tends to be more on the side of sort of red tape. But a zombie apocalypse is a unique political scenario because it's a military threat of a bunch of zombies attacking your cities, but it's caused by a medical threat of like a virus, or in this case, a cordyceps fungal infection. So
Yeah.
it actually does, I feel like, open the door in both senses of sort of authoritarianism from the left or the right, in that depending on what kind of threat it's sort of categorized as. The other thing that I think makes sense about having it as Bush and gives maybe makes the show a little, and again, it's not a political, I don't think these are political shows and movies, but maybe gives a little bit more of an interesting political flair, is that
Hmm.
with the show, I think the conflicts in the background, that even though it doesn't really affect the characters that much, is that it's more of a left right divide. And the reason I say that is because the fireflies in The Last of Us and the
By the left.
wolves, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. The Fireflies are definitely, they're sort of giving the hints of them being like a leftist organization. And if you look in Last of Us 2 of like the spray paint that the wolves have everywhere, it's all about like it's anti-fascist. It's very much like the coastal places like California and Washington, and sort of, that the far west coast fighting against. They
Yeah,
talk a lot
and
about
all the West Coast is where the Fireflies are, and the right coast is like just all like Republican, conservative, or whatever.
yeah, like there's
Yeah.
a strong hint when you see these sort of yeah, the Seattle talks about fighting the fascists and bringing back democracy. You can kind of see it's like, okay, these are sort of leftist revolutionary factions, and the Fireflies I think were sort of at the very least I interpreted them as being sort of a more liberal organization than they were like a Republican gun toting whatever you want. Um,
Yeah, I definitely got that like vibe when it came to the Fireflies. Even in like the game, not even the show. Like I kind of felt like they were very much like this like leftist freedom organization that seemed like freedom fighters. You know what I mean? Like that's what the vibe they kind of gave.
type leftists.
Exactly. So, like, when they kind of came in, they're just like, we're gonna come up with a cure. We want to like actually fight for a revolution. And then, like, Fedra was like, no, we're gonna go state control. Now, like, something that you actually mentioned that was interesting. So, where you say that, like, oh shoot, what was it? Oh yeah, you said like during the pandemic, you said like they were against like state lockdown, right? Like in like the COVID pandemic.
In the pandemic, to sort of steel man both sides, the left was the voice of this pandemic is real, it's an existential threat to our society, and the
Mm,
government is going to need to put restrictions on just the freedoms of our citizens in order to combat this pandemic. And the right
mm,
was the voice of the pandemic is overblown. Many on the right thought that the pandemic didn't exist, or that the vaccines didn't work, and they were very skeptical of the government measures, and that it was a ploy to grab power, which I
yeah.
think mirrors the left right divide, almost perfectly mirrors the left right divide of the early 2000s, where a lot of, like, a conspiracy theorist on the left would say that 9/11 was an inside job, or that
Mm-hmm,
America was lying about the wars in order to get more military power. They were bolstering this threat in order to gain an advantage politically to break constitutional laws, and curb people's freedoms in the forms of mass surveillance or airport checks. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I just think that it's just saying that a zombie apocalypse is an interesting conflict because it's kind of a military threat and a medical threat. So it kind of opens
Yeah.
both sides being authoritarian.
Okay. And like, so when you were like saying in like The Last of Us, so like at the beginning, so did you say like it's basically like almost an exact mirror to kind of like how like the 2000s as well as like COVID was, and that like the right was the one that was skeptical and the left was actually, yeah, I guess so. Because like just like we're saying, the Fireflies were the one who were saying, "Look, we can come up with a cure. There's plenty of ways. We got to stop all of these like security shutdowns of everything." And then the right was kind of like almost like the opposite. They were very much like, "We know we need to keep it secure and like keep everybody locked out." So, are you almost proposing like there's almost like kind of like an opposite effect, or would you say it mirrors it?
Yeah, The Last of Us. Oh, The Last of Us, the original game came out like
Mm-hmm.
9 years. What am I saying? Like 8 years before COVID. Was really was really it's like earlier than that, was really an issue. So because of that, The Last of Us obviously didn't have super predictive powers. But one interesting thing is that they seem to imply that I don't even know that Fedra is necessarily right wing, but they definitely are explicitly like the American military is what they spawned out of. Fedra, I think, spawns for like the federal executive disaster response and action or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like it's seen as basically it's some blend of FEMA, of America's like hurricane response, which is like a government military thing, and
Yep.
the Coast Guard and like just basically the federal military. So they roll it into Fed. Yeah, Fedra is the military in another name, and the Fireflies are sort of hinted at because they in their opening clip in the opening dialogue, what the Fireflies say is, like they talk about, the Fireflies have taken credit for yet another bombing in recent weeks, and they say
Mm-hmm.
the Fireflies are calling for a return to all branches of government, which is interesting because they sort of market them as a traditional like a an American democracy type freedom fighters, where what they're
Yeah.
critical of is that they shut down the Supreme Court. It's clear that Obama, or not Obama, quote unquote, this
Mm-hmm.
mysterious president in 2013,
Yeah.
shut down when he said the bureaucrats out of power. What that seemed, the way I took, is that he basically shut down the parliament and he shut down the judicial branch, and he had one branch of government which was like him at the head of a military dictatorship. And the Fireflies, what they say is their demands are to return all branches of government. That they
Yeah.
want the democratic voice of the people back, and they want elections back, and that they want to, yes, they believe that there is a cure to this. So it seems, I don't know that there's necessarily too many right left parallels, so much as it did seem like there was a very much, um, there was militarism versus liberalism. I would almost put it that way. Um,
Mm. Okay, that's a really like interesting way of putting it. Like, yeah, liberalism versus like militarism. Yeah, like man, it's just like so crazy. Like this, like the way like the show kind of portrays it. Like it's so eerily similar to like how like COVID almost went down and like how people were doing that. Um, you mentioned oh shoot, I'm almost blanking on what it was. I just thought of something. Um, yeah, like oh shoot, what was it? I literally just had it, man. I was like, you were talking about there was something that you said
I've
and
said
where
a
you're
lot of things.
well, yeah, you were talking about like the
Please go
political
ahead.
side and the mysterious president. I know that, but it was like pertaining to the actual. Oh yes, okay, I got it. So when you were like saying like about like how the fireflies were, talking about a cure.
Mhm.
Now, something I thought was really interesting in the second episode of The Last of Us was seeing like the microbiologists like going in and like viewing the fungi and like how like she was like you know when she like saw the tendrils and saw like how like horrific it was, she was just like, no, it's just bomb. Which I thought was like an interesting way because it's like just the immediate wanting to like bomb everything to get rid of it. Just because like obviously like it's highly transmittable. Um yeah, I don't know, because like in the Last of Us game, they mentioned that there was bombings, but they never mentioned that was almost like an immediate solution. Nor did they go like across the world, And I thought that was like an interesting like perspective to have that not only is it global, but like in Indonesia especially, like this is like a huge problem. But something I thought was interesting in it was that a lot of people don't know, like, so Indonesia is a huge flower producer, okay? And in the show, like, not only like in the first episode, like Joel mentions, like, I'm on Atkins, and at like, Sarah's like, oh, do you want like pancakes? Like, she says no to like the cookies and the raisins. I like how in this show, because there was like a theory going around, but it's pretty much like that's just the story of it, was how the fungi was attaching to like the flower instead of like actually just kind of being spores, which I thought was like an interesting change. And I'll go on about it like in like the research and that. But what did you think about that change?
I think it. I think it makes sense for a few reasons. One of them is that the Last of Us video game was limited in that when they were making it, they were thinking, let's make an awesome game that also has a good story. What they didn't know is that as a video game, it was okay, but the story was going to be one of the most beloved in the history of the medium.
Yeah.
So for that reason, there's a reason that people are scouring the internet, and I, for example, have rewatched all the cutscenes in the game because they're so amazing. But the gameplay is something where it's like, yeah, there's better gameplay out there.
Oh,
But on
sure.
that note,
Sure.
what that means is that they didn't focus that much on giving us cutscenes because they thought, like most games, is we don't want to watch a movie, we want to play a game. Um,
Mhm.
we don't want some Hideo Kojima 90 minutes of CGI movie and
Oh God,
5 minutes of game.
giving me flashbacks to the game I played today, man.
Yeah, like we don't want that. No thanks. This is an American game. We want to see things blow up. We don't care about your stupid feelings and your story. Which is fine. It makes sense for, I mean, how developers are probably just trying to respond to the market. But in a show, there is no gameplay, right? Like we don't get to shoot things and blow up things and set traps and snipe clickers. What we have to do is we have to pay attention to a story. So in that we're in the show to see context. I think adding that flashback made sense of, yeah, like um I'm here to see more of this world and explore Joel and Ellie and the zombie apocalypse with more detail. And I think giving that flashback was a pretty perfect way to do that and give context. I will admit it did seem a little bit like it could have gone further in the amount of time they spent on it. because,
Oh,
well, just in the sense that it felt like the first flashback basically told us as its main message, fungal diseases are terrifying, and
yes.
if one shows up, it's going to end the world. Which the game didn't have that, and we kind of figured that out by deduction. We kind of know because we see the world. Um,
After 20 years, yeah, it's not pretty.
we kind of get that. But it's okay. It's a show, and they give us some context, and I like that. The opening to the second episode felt like the after all of that time, it kind of told us, hey, fungal infections are really bad, and if they show up, they're gonna end the world. And I kind of felt like, okay, like this is kind of saying the same thing as the first one again. So that part of me was there, where at the end of it, it just kind of felt like, um, I don't know, like not that I'm glad it was there, but I wish it went further. I wish it told us something new. Where in the second flashback, we're like, oh, I didn't know that.
I thought it actually said a lot.
Oh, okay, maybe
So
I should have missed something.
okay, like so this is why. Okay, so like there's actually a couple of reasons I'm going to stay here. So well, first, the reason why it was so big was because like yes, in the first one, it was almost like a prediction. It was a guy in the 60s, you know, he's sitting back in his chair and he's like, you know, a lot of people think it's going to be viruses, but we survived.
Is that your
However, huh?
Is that your Scottish accent?
Was he Scottish?
He was Scottish.
Oh, well, okay, now I got to redo this.
America controlled the virus for millions of years. And like a real war, millions die, but in the end, we always win. Fungal infection, on the other hand, like, is that not what he said?
Oh, okay, yeah, but that's not really Scottish. It just sounds like an old English accent, if anything.
Well, I remember at the end, he's very Scottish, where the host says, "Well, what happens then?" And he says, "What happens then? We lose." And he just says
Oh,
it.
okay, okay, I can kind of hear it now. Okay,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm not gonna do his voice now because I can't do Scottish accents. But anyways, it was a prediction. He was saying that like fungal infections, you know, they're like rapid. They got like you know, he never said spores, but he should have because, dude, like in the Last of Us game, it was so terrifying that you could just breathe it in and it's immediately like contaminated your lungs. You know what I mean? It like and the fact that like how like spreadable spores are and the fact that they're like naked to the eye, like I think that's a scary element, but I understand why they couldn't do that with the show. Anyways, going back to what I was saying though, is that it was a prediction. And it was the fact that he was saying if the world was going to heat up, eventually this fungal, you know, or just fungi is going to have to evolve to match the heat. And when they can match the heat, they can match the body's temperature. And once that happens, now we have a human infection that's rampant. And there's no real like cure for that. Now he didn't explicitly say there was a cure. I don't know if you remember that. Did he say there was a cure?
Oh
Or did he
well,
say no?
he didn't say explicitly, but the guy said, like, how do we stop this? And then what he said is, we lose. Like, there is no way
Oh,
to,
okay.
which,
So he did. So he said there was no way to like fight it, but that's okay. The reason why that was important that he stated it there was because he mentioned global warming. He mentioned the fact that this is actually like a threat if it were to happen, and because like like research like on fungi was actually like still like it actually picked up a lot like during that time like the 60s, right? Because like you know science was like getting more like traction. There's like different types of fields, so like this was like really like huge, and the fact like you know that would actually like scare everybody even in the 60s. Now it's huge because immediately they show it's 2003 and that was the biggest heat wave, which is what we like talked about, and like that there was an evolution, and then it was like on to like in the flower and everything. Now when we go to the second episode, the reason why that was huge is because they shot it in Indonesia, and it's demonstrating that this is outside of America. The Last of Us game actually talks about nothing outside of America. Now, it is implied for sure, but there's no understanding that it's actually like outside. Right now, it seems like it's a contaminant of America.
yeah.
Now, that was for number one, is that they wanted to expand like their universe to apply to different areas. Another one that's huge was because, um, well, the fact that like the biggest flour mill production is in Indonesia.
Mhm.
And that's really huge. Now I'm actually gonna go on a little bit of like history like right now. So with like the flour mill and everything, because many people like online were kind of like wondering like why is it that they like talked about flour. It actually like happened like in a real life. There was a thing called like the ergot like fungo, like our fungi. Now, this was like little like black pieces that existed like on like the wheat. And originally that has like a lot of medical purposes. So if like somebody was giving like labor or so, you could actually like use that to like help like with the pain. Now, if you ingested it, well no, that was a bad one. The problem was if you like that medical knowledge was lost in history. And when like somebody like ground it up, like it didn't see the actual black part of it, they put it into their bread, and when they ingested it, they experienced loads of symptoms. There was delirium, there was aggressiveness, there was hallucinations, and there was also oh shoot, what is it called? Gangrene. That's what it is. So like literally like all of like the edge of your limbs are like, basically going black and like you're
Mhm.
dying, flames, everything. Point is, that was an actual real event in history, and it took them a long time to figure that out. And I liked how they shot it in Indonesia because the ergot root like was a very real thing, and it existed like during like the French Revolution, or actually before the French Revolution. Attacked the poor because they ate bread. Now, in today's economy, as you know, bread's very huge everywhere. America, like Europe, like everywhere, right? So the fact that they did that in one of the biggest flour mills, and like just the shock on her face when she was like, boom. Like
Yeah,
because there is no solution. And you actually got to see a little up close like her fear that it was transmitted by a bite. And I don't know if you noticed, but they actually like zoomed in on the bite mark. And when she peeled back the skin, you saw like the infection underneath the first layer of skin. I don't know if you saw that or not. But
I
they
did.
like
Yeah,
yeah, and that was creepy. Like just like to see that it was spread, and to see like the fucking like oh what the tendrils coming out of the throat, like,
yeah,
and how that was like in the head, like that was just creepy. And the point of that, like that I'm kind of getting at, is that it showed a second example of like so this Indonesia, it's a world problem, biggest flour producer, so you know that it got into like the flour. This is shipped off to America, huge issue. And I don't even think, and this is before the actual thing became a problem, because she even said, there was like 14 people that they couldn't find.
yeah.
So that was the start. So the first one was just kind of going into it like, this is what it is. This is why it's a problem. But this is like the starting incident of that problem. Does that make sense? Like this is the beginning of the infection, and it started there.
It is to give a bit of context to why the both scientists are really terrified is that fungal infections don't have vaccines. A vaccine is something where basically very simply we put like the dead viral material of a virus into someone and then it teaches the cells how to keep those viruses out. So it
Yes.
basically says, hey, when viruses pretended to be something else and getting through your membrane, don't let this guy in. We know his tricks. Um, but there is no vaccine against getting mauled by a bear. Like that just there doesn't exist. And a fungi, I learned this quite recently. A fungi is more closely related to a human than it is to a plant. Um, there's a reason Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about this that no one's ever accused eating asparagus of being too meaty, but mushrooms taste meaty for a reason. It's because they are part of the same biological taxonomy that we are. And
Mm.
what that means is that they're really, really difficult to treat because the more closely related to you something is, the harder it is to find something that will kill it that won't kill you, right? Because a disinfectant is the name of something that will kill life on a surface. Pour
Hmm.
boiling water all over a counter, everything's dead on it. But you can't use that to get bacteria off your arm because that would burn your arm too. It would kill everything that the boiling water touches.
Yeah.
So for something to be antiseptic means that it can kill the bacteria but won't kill you. It's an antiseptic material is something used to clean living flesh.
Yeah.
And the difficulty with things like fungi or cancer is the other sort of cardinal example of this is that well, what do you put inside a human that will kill this but not kill something that's almost identical to this, right? Um,
Hmm.
which is why, if you know, it's even about cancer treatments, like what does radiation therapy do? Well, it kills the cancer, but it also kind of kills you, and you're hoping it
Yeah,
kills more of the cancer than you. What does chemotherapy do? Well, it's putting poisons inside the body and hoping that, we'll hope the tumor dies before the person dies. Like it's that kind of
literally what it weakens you entirely. Yeah.
yeah. And what a fungal infection, the problem with it is that, yeah, like there's, it's not like a virus inside your cells. It's a separate organism living in you. And it's not like something you could just pick up and take out because it's growing in patches. So if you have a fungal infection, like you're really screwed in the real. I'm not talking about Last of Us. I'm about in the real world. If you, they're rare, but if you get one, a fungal infection is not usually not something you it's not always terminal, but you usually don't get rid of it. As far as I know, like you're stuck with it, um, which can be problematic. So in The Last
Hmm.
of Us, when both of these scientists find out that fungi are burrowing into human beings and taking control of their brains, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, yeah, like you can't do surgery on a brain to take it out of all of the places it's grown.
Yeah,
It's spidered into it. Like if something's spidered into the brain, the only way to kill it is to kill the brain. That's
yeah.
that's the
Well,
reality.
exactly. Because
Um,
that's the thing. The soldiers even are like, "Can you do anything?" As if it's like a benign tumor. No,
it's
it's
a
not like it's just
malignant
a
tumor.
patch. It's literally in you. Like,
Yeah. It's literally like these fungi. What they are, they're like it's like if cancer was contagious. Like
it's awful. It's like
yeah,
you can't
it's
do
really
anything.
bad.
Like,
Uh, like I don't know if you've heard about brain cancer, but someone gets this little bit of cancer in their brain, then it spiders out, and they just start to seemingly go nuts, or they start acting really really irrationally, and then it's like, well, you can't do surgery on it. What are you going to lobotomize them? Like remove the frontal lobe? Like the
yeah.
um. So no, that's why this is really a terrifying concept, and yeah, no, that's both of those scientists were on point of don't mess with that. That's also a good PSA of like if you have mold in your house, man, like watch Last of Us. You'll know, like get out of that house.
Yeah. People
Like,
don't understand, like, even mold is, like, dangerous. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just from the obvious, like, there's actually a story where there was this guy. So he saw mold on bread, and then, like, I don't know if he was either dared or he just didn't care. He ate the mold on the bread, and he thought he'd be fine. This mold literally, like, because it got, like, on the back of the throat when he was obviously, like, chewing and, like, swallowing,
mhm.
it, like, actually ate most of his face. Like it actually like kind of like just kept growing in his body. It didn't just die like it
Yeah,
was, which is why PSA everybody, don't eat moldy bread. Don't eat anything moldy. It's just bad because that shit's alive and it festers, and in certain conditions it'll like repopulate, and that's one of the great big issues.
I don't really get like the logic behind anyone thinking they're immune to mold, because it's like, what, you think mold's going to live in a place that's wet, warm, and filled with protein and carbon?
And warm.
That's what I mean. Like it's like wet, warm, filled with protein and sugars. Oh no, yeah, it's not going to live
It's
here.
literally like all the things that like you need.
It's all the
Like
things that mold. By the
you
way, it's
are the
also
petri
dark.
dish, son.
Yeah. By the way,
Like,
it's also dark because mold doesn't like light. Like it's really.
oh,
Um, yeah, no. That's why it's kind of silly. Yeah, don't. And I don't. I think I told you this, but when I was about 3.5 years old,
mhm.
I slept in a bedroom in a kind of a shady rental place. Uh,
Yeah,
and one day, the roof of my bedroom caved in, and just the whole place was filled with mold dust and stuff. Um,
Jesus.
and my dad actually told me, he said he felt guilty. He's felt guilty about that my entire life because I have this cough. You know about. I've always had this history where I've
Yeah, yeah. You have asthma. Yeah.
yeah, and he actually said that he actually in his spare time he does research to find out, like, just for his own knowledge, like, would a kid have asthma if you put them in a moldy bedroom when they were 3? And it is a legitimate, like,
He didn't know the thing just cave in. Like
no,
you
no,
can't always visibly see that.
I have nothing. Like, I don't cough and be like, oh, dad. Ugh." But like, um,
God damn.
yeah, but it is a real concern of, they have told you like I've never really found out quite what's up with my respiratory system, and that is a possibility of like, well, I slept in a mold filled bedroom for about a year there. But no, anyways, mold is it's a serious threat, and that's why. Um, oh, sorry. Also, side tangent, really side tangent.
That's okay, man.
When I was in grade six, I'm not gonna give a name, but I'll say our grade six teacher
Uh
who
oh.
taught both of us science was teaching us biology and had a list of all of the different fungi that existed.
Yeah.
One of the fungi on that list was rust, which science is just, and I remember talking about, when your car is really old and there's those patches of rust growing up.
I know she made it seem like that was like it's a fungal infection. It's a chemical reaction. What are you talking about? It's a chemical
Rust
reaction.
is a fungi that eats iron.
Oh Jesus, that was so stupid. I remember that.
I'm not
I
crazy.
remember. I remember she because I think you actually questioned her on it, and she tried to be like, "Well, Caleb, like when you have a car
I'm,
and it's wet with some salt, and this actually creates the perfect condition for a fungi called rust." And I'm like, I remember I was kind of like, wait, what the fuck? That's a chemical. What are you talking? What you just said the two key ingredients: salt and water, and time
no, it's really
and
interesting.
metal.
Um,
Yeah.
when we find out about like, yeah, you're right, iron. When they find these veins of iron that have all gone to rust, it's those fungi.
If
Um,
there's any remnants, it will grow. Like
yeah, yeah, no. That was
oh.
that was a hoot and a half. Um, yeah, no, but I just thought yeah. Another thing that I thought was kind of funny on that note was that, and I just checked this. I just double checked it now.
Mhm.
Mars is known, like the planet is known for being red because of like the rust. Like you've probably heard, like it's iron. It's a lot of it's rust.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is a big contributor to that red color. I remember for a while thinking like, wait, does this teacher think that the planet Mars is just a giant like fungal colony? Like it's just a
An
massive
entire skeleton.
planet of mold. Um, like like
Oh.
we already found alien life apparently.
I'm not, I wouldn't be surprised because she was always so like sure of herself on everything. Even in history. You remember when like she was talking about the indigenous people versus the British and she's like, oh, the British, so stupid. They lined up and like we get murdered. And it's like because that was thought to be brave to like stand in a line and shoot. They were ready for like this like stealth warfare that they were
Yeah,
walking
it
into.
was it was meant to be honorable, not stupid. They knew that people figured out how to hide. That wasn't that they hadn't invented hiding yet. It was that they didn't think it was honorable to hide behind a tree, then run out and stab someone. You know
I
that.
know
Anyways, no, that was a. I love that teacher, but maybe
that
not.
teacher had a lot of
Yeah, maybe
factual mistakes. Oh
alternative.
my! But
Yeah, no.
no, but like going back to the game, like honestly, like that entire like pandemic would be so scary because like if we took in the fact that there was actual like spores, which do exist with the cordyceps, like I don't even think like anybody could be alive that's not infected because in the game they make it so you see it because it's like a dense like spores, but it makes no sense because this is literally like you can't see spores. You like
Yeah.
they're like invisible. So the fact that like that you could just be able to like see them and then put on a gas mask that made no sense. In actuality, like everybody would be dead because even in the documentary I was talking about with the ant and the cordyceps, those like cordyceps release up to like 20,000 spores a second, and only one particle needs to get on the ant's head. And once it does, it just immediately, like within minutes, shuts down its muscle like control, redirects it, to the location so it can grow into that damp, closed off location, and then it does its death bite into the ground, and then that's when the whole like mold covers the body, and then it sprouts out of its head, and that's when it just kind of takes control.
It's the end.
Now, oh, sorry, you were sorry. What did you say?
Oh no, I just said that's the end.
Yeah, which I don't think it would even be possible to live in the Last of Us universe. Like actually, because if you didn't somehow get infected, even though it's literally impossible, as we already described. The next thing is these things are so incredibly strong. And that's what I like about the change. Like in the game, like they're strong, but they kind of like just swing, like you know what I mean. Like they can barely walk. In this like show, they literally lunge if they see you. And that's what was great because you saw like clickers in the second one, which like if they hear you, they have like almost precise accuracy and like lunging. Whereas in the first one, like they just see you and they run crazy and they'll like even leap at you. That old lady that was like a fucking spider on the ground. I don't even know what to say about it. Like that's just crazy in itself. Like I don't think like anybody would actually survive unless you had like that semi-automatic that Joel does. Even though that doesn't make sense either because in the game he only had a pistol. Like you didn't get that semi-automatic till the end of the game.
Yeah, yeah, but okay. Here's the thing:
Mhm.
he's still less powerful than he was in the game because in the game he had like a bow and arrow, a shotgun, a hunting rifle, an Uzi, El Diablo,
He
a
never
freaking.
had whoa. He never had an Uzi and an El Diablo. Don't get it. Don't be tripping here. Don't you trip up here and be like he had an Uzi. He had the gang bang bang. Like don't be talking Slay on the channel.
He had. I remember he had like four long, like big weapons. Like he had a hunting rifle and a
Shotgun.
shotgun and a bow and
Mm-hmm.
arrow. Um, and then
Sniper.
he had the sniper. Yeah, and then wait, I think the sniper rifle was just a hunting rifle. Like you upgrade it with a scope. I
Oh
think.
yeah, he just put a scope on. Yeah, and then it was like you had, I
And
think,
then
two different types of pistols,
he had
which
a,
was the six shooter, or there was the just Glock.
yeah, a six shooter, a Glock, and then he also you get an El Diablo. You do get an
What
El
what
Diablo.
is an El Diablo?
It's like a crappy pistol with a scope on it. Um, basically, I don't want to say crappy, but in the game, it's not a very good weapon.
Hold on,
um,
El Diablo. I gotta look this up.
it's in part two.
Oh, you're you're right because
I
you
don't.
could put a scope on it. I remember that, and it's actually really good if you're able to like snipe
Well, it's
because
like a
it's
sniping pistol. It's weird, yeah.
yeah because it will like shatter the brain. It's actually kind of cool
And
to
then
watch in
the
the
other
game.
thing is he also has like Shorty, which is like a mini. It's like a sawed-off shotgun.
Sawed off shotgun.
Yeah.
Okay, see, I'm forgetting the weapons. I'm playing through it again, so like I'll see them. But
Last what I'm saying is Joel has like frickin' the Deadpool backpack or whatever with like every weapon in the universe in it. In the like, let's be honest, like he does.
he
In the
does. He
game
does.
or in the show, they're like, okay, he has his pistol, and then he probably has a knife, and then he has like the soldier like semi-automatic assault rifle. Those are his weapons. And I don't mind that personally because I see that as like, okay, like he's outfitted. That's okay. And he still has the ammo shortage, probably more of an ammo shortage.
Hmm.
Because he doesn't have 1,000 weapons with 1,000 bullets. Yeah. So I'm not mad about his ammo abilities. I am a little bit mad about, as someone on the Angry Joe show pointed out, like Joel does have some artificial aiming difficulty with that clicker, where he's like, "Whoa, I can't seem to hit it," and it's like, oh, okay, dude, like you've been
I
left too.
know it's my biggest pet peeve in shows when they go like, and
Yeah,
then like they're going like diagonal, horizontal. They're just like they can't hit whatsoever. It's like, dude, just go fucking straight.
oh, here's the thing. This is my take. I can say that when people say that aiming in real life is way harder than it is in movies and video games, they're right. Like, I've tried hitting. Maybe I just suck at shooting, but I've tried hitting like a bottle from like, I want to say like 25 meters away. Now this is when I was a kid,
Yeah.
a kid shooting a rifle, but whatever. Like it's just it's how it works. And it's like hard because like whatever a two difference in angle means you miss it. So that is genuinely difficult. Um,
Yeah,
especially because you don't have a fucking crosshair in real life. You're just using your imagination. But
yeah.
that being said, when movies have people who are like 10 feet apart, and it's like, okay, brother, if you point the gun at the guy, you hit the guy somewhere. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should be able to draw
Hmm.
somewhat of a line. If you can point your finger at someone accurately, then you could probably point the gun at this person. And you're right, Joel, at this difference, maybe he was just scared, I don't know, but he was offside a few times. Uh,
Yeah. You know what? We're not giving him enough credit to the fact of like just like the problem is like the recoil as well as like the power from those things, right? It's like when you shoot, it's so much power behind it that it's like you immediately go like upwards. You know what I mean? So like, because like you know like how in like just like you were saying, certain shows, they'll basically like they'll have an assault rifle and then somehow amazingly like shoot perfectly at a target, and it's like, dude, no, because even the military, like I had watched a video on it. They actually put it into the semi-automatic. They usually like do it so it's like so when they shoot, it's like tut 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 because it's easier to aim with. Because when they do it the other way, really that's just like if there's either a lot of people in front of you in close distance or you just need to like scare them
yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
Like that's the only reasons why you would turn that on. Other than that, you keep it on like the like semi-automatic. So I get that. It's just I found with it like wouldn't it have been scarier if Joel had only a pistol?
yeah, it would have been. But I also think there's something to it that the rifle adds gives him the option of more firepower.
Mm,
Because these military weapons give him the ability of like basically if you shoot anything with a rifle of that size. I don't know the caliber and I don't quite know the firepower. I don't know what the do you know what the proper word is for the firepower of a gun? I actually
the
don't.
fire. Um,
The firepower? I don't know.
Here, let me look it up. Um,
Caliber is just the size of the bullet, right? I'm just thinking.
Firepower of gun velocity. You mean?
No, just the power in the chamber. Like there should be like how do you classify guns that have like the power of a gun? Um, I actually don't know the ranking there.
I think
Um,
it's just firepower.
okay, I had the right word then. Like a weapon of that firepower is going to do damage to a point.
Caliber. You mean?
No, caliber's the bullet. Caliber's the
Yeah, I know. Like some people use that like as a term of like saying something of that caliber. Like you know, they
no.
like it's technically the wrong term, but like they're using it to
Well,
description. It's okay. We're not gonna fancy on words. You
I
continue.
would say is a rifle of that firepower, and not caliber. Actually, I don't. I actually found out rifles of that size they don't have as large a caliber as you think. Like the bullets
Hmm.
aren't stupidly big; they're pretty normal
No,
size.
no, they're actually quite small.
It's
They're kind of
it's
like they're just a bit bigger than BB, I think, right?
yeah, it's just the rifle that's really powerful. It's shooting a small thing, but it's packing it back with that gunpowder.
Hmm.
But anyways, I think the idea is that you shoot anything with that rifle, it's getting knocked. Like it's gonna go through. But on the other hand, something like a pistol, maybe it takes 4 or 5 shots to really put a dent in a clicker or something.
Yeah.
I think that might be the idea there that his rifle can like. That's why he missed because if he hit the zombie on the first try, it would just be down. Whereas a pistol on a zombie would just basically it would take yeah
Yeah.
might even just get stuck in the fungi surface fungi. Um, but yeah, no, that's I generally like I think everything in the first episode.
Hmm.
Um, I think it or sorry in the second episode I think it all made sense. The action was good. I liked that they changed the courthouse to or the state house to be an
Museum.
no at the town hall at the end. Like the thing the building that blows up in the end. They changed it so that instead of being a Fedra as the threat, they made it infected as the threat.
Which
This makes
makes sense.
and Troy Baker talked a bit about why it was changed, and he said it doesn't really make much sense that Fedra in the game would be
You mean
like.
Neil Druckmann?
Was Neil Druckmann the one that explained it? I forget which.
Yeah, Neil Druckmann would say it doesn't make sense because why is Fedra there? How do they even know that they're there? They just show up out of nowhere. They're just like, okay, we got to drive the plot forward. That's literally their only purpose. So it made
Yeah,
sense to have the infected there.
it also makes sense from a story perspective that this episode is about showing what the infected world looks like.
Hmm.
First episode showed us what the military world looks like because we spend the first half in the QZ. Second episode, the whole time they're explaining what infected do, and they're fighting infected, and they set up a plot thread of Tess being bitten by an infected. For the ending of that episode to be, oh wait, the military's back. It's like whoa, like let's finish developing this antagonist. And I'm happy with that because that means that at the end of episode two, the audience understands what we're up against, and then we can go back to fighting all the big bad humans later. But right now, we know what a zombie is in this story, which I
Hmm.
think makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I really did like that change because, like, obviously in the first episode, we just got like a little bit of the runner. We didn't actually get too much in detail. It was kind of like, okay, this is the start of it. We have a few of them, or we see more of them, but it's just like very brief interaction. Whereas in this one, we got a good in depth look at the clicker, which, by the way, the prosthetics on that thing are amazing. I like how they went practical and not CGI with a lot of the things in the show. Like the set pieces, like you were saying, are just beautiful. And they actually like it's funny when they're talking about it because they got somebody to not only like have like the build of the clicker, but to actually sound and animate it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of imagining like going to an audition and having to click a certain way
Yep.
and then have like the body limbs like you know what I mean doing that. Like that was just awesome. But in this episode, you got to see a little more of how the runners like and how the actual like colony of the infected operated. Like just the fact that like you saw them in the sun, like how that actually was painful to them and they flip over almost to try and get away.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of that change in the tendril? Because I think that it's like at first I was like, wait a second, that didn't happen in the game, but then I'm like, okay, like this is actually a neat little change. I like how they're almost connected, and that makes it more scary and kind of like re-implements that fear that the spores once had. So that's almost like, hey, we couldn't do the spores, but let's do it. So it's like a connection.
To steal an idea from the Angry Joe show, I think we took it.
That's a reference for this episode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think what they put it in their review was that they took out one ridiculous overpowered idea and put in another ridiculous overpowered idea. So it all kind
yeah,
of balances out. Because the spores, like you said, it's just this idea that, oh, look, a room just instantly makes you infected. Better have a gas mask. But on the flip side, they made it say, okay, we're not going to make rooms filled with that.
yeah.
Partially because it's kind of an on off conflict. Like, oh no, there's spores in the room. Either A, I'm infected and I'm a zombie, or B, I'm wearing a gas mask and there's no problem at all. Like, there either is fear or there isn't. Whereas with this thing, it gives a lot more freedom to, oh crap, like you're going to summon a horde of infected, which is going to be a better action scene than a guy saying, good thing I put my gas mask on in time. Like, I'm glad it's like, they're
It
telling you,
doesn't make sense because just like one particle will technically get you infected, and
yeah,
you can't see it. It makes no
yeah,
sense.
you can't,
Like,
yes, I think it's a worthwhile change. Um,
yeah,
there's all the changes in this have been pretty worthwhile. There's nothing I've seen where I'm like, they've ruined it. Like, they've all kind of made sense. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think I'm which is good because the like I'm yeah, I mean the first game was a great game. I was worried that if they changed too much, it'd be ruined. Um, but no, I do like that they changed that. Also, it did lead to that, and I think we disagree on this, but I like the zombie smooch. I have to say it
I,
works with the story.
I never said I didn't like.
Well,
I said I was repulsed by it at first.
okay,
I'm
sorry, I thought
still
you were,
repulsed, of course, but like I do kind of like how they did it, and it falls in with the theme that Neil Druckmann was mentioning, with the theme of love, and that is how they also reproduce.
yeah,
That is how they do it, and I like that like aspect. It was creepy, it was gross, but God, did they have that like horror element perfectly down pat? You know?
yep, yeah, and so that I liked, and I really did like that final moment of Tess goes into shock when it's
It's
like
not. I don't think it's shock though.
or whatever it is. It's like she goes into like
The cordyceps took like it's actually like taking over her muscles.
yeah, so she's like frozen, and that
Mhm.
last little bit of human in her strikes the lighter, and then you see her get the flame, and I'm like, Yes. Yes. Drop it. And then you see the explosion. And
Mm-hmm.
I, there's something really dark about this universe if we're happy to see Tess get exploded. Like, the fact that that's the good outcome says something about
Mm-hmm.
the tone of this world. And that final shot of like Joel looking over his shoulder at the exploding building and then having to keep walking because that otherwise none of this was worth it. And Ellie just like, in emotional shock
Mm-hmm.
really left the episode on a really great cliffhanger. What are your predictions for episode 3? What do you think's going to go down?
Um. Well, before I go on about the episode like 3, I actually just want to touch on something real quickly.
Sure.
Like, just like based on what you said, like I do agree. Like, it is like a dark universe where like that is like the happy moment where like she dies. Now, what I thought was interesting was that Joel's different in his reaction to Tess. So the one detail which Neil Druckmann as well as the director and every like when they were in their interview was how like Pedro Pascal like goes back a little bit when Tess tries to take a step forward after telling him that she's infected, and I'm like, shit, that's a sad detail, you know, and he almost immediately closes off. I don't know if you saw that, like everything that like he never got to like kiss her. She never got to kiss him like that in their final part. Her last kiss, by the way, think about that, was the greatest steps.
I know. Imagine not only getting rejected by the man you love, because you're basically saying like, "Please go on without me. I'm gonna die to save your life," and then he
Mm-hmm.
just leans in for a second, and then after staring at her, he just runs away, and it's like, "Oh, that's gotta feel bad." And then she's sitting there all alone, and then to make things even ironically worse, she realizes, "Oh, I'm not alone. I have a new boyfriend."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh God. And
yeah.
that's the thing because she looks repulsed, but like it was kind of like a weird like there was like a dichotomy with it, you know what I mean? Where it's like she seemed like it was like that's like her settling. Like it wasn't like it was twisted, but it was at the same time because I think that was like the cordyceps finally taking over her brain. And her
Yeah.
last thing was like her like thumb just able to light it up. But what I thought was interesting was that in the game, he does not want to leave Tess. Even when she's like, go, he's like, I don't want like he's like almost like refusing. In this one, he's the one who says, "No, let's go." And then Ellie's like, "We can't leave her. No, let's stay. We can fight him off. We can do something." Like there was like almost a reverse role with it. And I really like that change because that seems more true to like Joel. He's a survivor and he is willing to do whatever it takes to survive, just like with Sarah, just like everything we have seen up to this point. And it's kind of weird. It's I like how this just they show how cut off he is. Even in the beginning of the episode, when Tess, you remember the little boy, and he like decides to like he literally picks up the body in the same fashion as he picked up Sarah, puts it in the fire with no feeling.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
I don't know that I think it's better than the game. I think it's telling the same thing in a different way than the game.
Mm,
As in the game, they sort of have it as the message is he lost Tess, and Tess was like the last kind of thing he cared about. Um, and what I find interesting is that I think he's faking it in the show, and by faking it, I think his acting closed off is just a different reaction to that same emotion of severe sadness. That he he's brutally mortified that Tess is gone, but as soon as
mm,
this happens, he doesn't process. He just
closes off.
closes off, and you see he's trying to jump the gun because if he gives him a second to feel that sadness, um, he can't swim out of it. And in the game, I think we see that similarly. That he doesn't really talk about Tess's death, like she died,
Exactly.
and he's immediately just killing soldiers right after
Yeah.
that.
Well, he even says like Ellie's like I can't believe we just left her, and then the game is like stop, and then they never mention even with like Bill, which we won't spoil like too much, of course, like because we're not in episode 3 yet. But just to kind of give context, when Bill kind of briefly mentions Tess in the game, he's still like closed off and doesn't want to acknowledge even her death. Even when Bill insults her, he's just like, "Stop. Let's just focus on the mission." Like, and he's
Mm-hmm.
very mission oriented, and which makes sense even with like how he's like a veteran in this one, which I think in the game like would have benefited if they made him a veteran too. But
Mm-hmm.
just like he is very like closed off, and that's a shield from accepting because he cannot go through that pain like he did with Sarah. Once Sarah died, that was it for Joel. That he will never experience that pain in any way again, or he will not allow himself to feel the pain he
Yeah,
once did. And
exactly.
I really love how the show is trying to show this in a different medium and explore it with different situations, but getting the same result. And sometimes even better. It's like I know, like you said, like you know, they don't always do it like better than the game. I think they sometimes do this like certain situations better than the game. Like just like seeing that courthouse scene, like I'm like, no, that one was kind of
That was
better.
better.
You know.
Like, honestly, in the game, like in my opinion, that was I never really put too much thought into Tess as a character in the game. Um she's sort of just she's in there at the beginning to accompany Joel at first, and then as soon as kind of Ellie enters the story, they kind of establish, okay, like then Fedra kills her, and we see the actual progression of the real story kind of kicks off after that. I was going to say there's a scene in the game. It's a brief one, and you can even miss it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they walk up to a grave that has a marker on it. Joel and Ellie, that is. And I'm not going to say what this relates to, but Ellie brings up someone from their past um, that they had to bury at some point. And as soon as he starts talking about it, he says, "Stop! Stop!" He cuts her off. Like he's like, "Stop! No, we don't talk about that stuff." Um, and you can see that resistance Joel has to he's a masculine stoical warrior, right? He's all about
Mm-hmm.
and they don't really say whether or not this is good or bad, but they do sort of say he's all about shutting the past out and forgetting about that and focusing on just making sure that whatever the future is, it's as good as it can be. Um, like they said at the end of the last episode, save who you can save. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and what's I think kind of kind of sad about that belief, you know, move on for the past, save who you can save, is that I think as much as Joel thinks he's sort of moved on from the past and he thinks of himself as this closed, detached, um, forget about your suffering, just look forward and get the mission done,
Yeah.
is that really deep down, he still wants to save Sarah. Like there's still that inkling in him.
Mm-hmm.
Tell. Um, that's why I think that save you who you can save line kind of cuts at him, because there's part of it where it's not save everyone, it's not save who you love the most, it's save who you can save.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of there's this reality to it of can't save Sarah, and there's just a little bit of a salt in an open wound with that I
Mm-hmm.
really like. I don't know, sorry to go on a tangent there, but
No, no, and I get that too because it's like that's all he thinks about on repeat, right? Is he could not save Sarah, no matter how many times, and like he thought about it, the situation he can't, and I like that, and just like you were saying, that line really digs at him, and I don't know, like to me, it seems like he's in a lot more pain in the show, and this might be a little more controversial whether it is or it's not. And the only reason why I say that is because the first time we see after the 20 years, he gets up and what does he do? Takes a beer, takes meds, and washes it down
Mhm.
because that is the best way to ignore the pain. It's like in this one, he experiences every day. In the game, he gets up and Tess offers him a drink. And he's like, no, that's okay. And he's very, like, he's still kind of closed off to Tess. To me, they seem like in the show, they are a couple, they have a connection, and he is in pain every single day, and so is she. And that's evident, like with the like boy in the flames. She couldn't do it, and I like how Neil Druckmann illustrated like a story that unfortunately couldn't get into the show, but was the idea when she was at
Yeah,
the beginning of the pandemic. There was her husband and her child. Now, both of them got infected, and she was able to kill the husband, but the child she could not force herself to do. As a mother, she just decided to lock the kid in the basement and leave. And I think that is just an incredibly sad situation, but it says so much about her. And oh, sorry, all I can think about is Joel saying, "You don't know what loss is," because he actually had to have his child die in his arms.
yeah,
But oh, I don't know. Like I like how Neil kind of brought that into the mythology around Tess, and that explained her character a lot more, and how she wasn't able to save her son either. The only thing she could do was lock the kid in the basement, and that was what And then she left. You know, I, I don't know. I think that's this is really like crazy. You
mhm.
know.
Yeah. I want to say more, but I'm gonna save it for when I don't have to spoil a bunch of
True.
amazing stuff because
Okay.
we have only gotten through the beginning of this excellent adventure, um, which circles me back around to the I guess the question of what do you think of the next episode? What are our predictions? What do we think is going to be different? What do you think is going to be the same? And do we think it's going to build on what we have so far?
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really know what to predict because there was like this teaser of the next episode where Bill and Frank are there. And I'm not going to spoil like the significance between Bill and like Frank and what they do for Joel and Ellie. Now, I was surprised because they're almost hinting that both of these characters are important and they're going to be there for a while. So to kind of gauge how long they're going to be in, what happens, because they're going to Pittsburgh. And oh wait, was it Pittsburgh? No, what's the town called?
Well, they
Pitts,
go into
Pitt,
Lincoln.
Lincoln, that's what it is. Sorry. They're going to Lincoln, and I'm very curious of how they're going to do it. I'm excited because uh, the actor who plays uh, oh shoot, what's his name? I
One,
just said yes, Swanson. I think
Nick,
he's going to do an amazing job in this show. I'm
yeah,
excited because he just embodies the character like so well,
he
you know.
does. He really does. I think I have a bit of a theory on that. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
suspect that one change they might make, the biggest change I can imagine on
Yep.
that note, is that they might roll the Bill story into the Sam and Henry story.
You think?
That's the biggest change. You mentioned that. You said you think Bill and Frank are going to be around for a while. And if my math is right, I think there's a very specific sequence that the episodes are going to take place under. Of I know the third episode is going to be Bill and Frank. We know that. I know that's not really a spoiler because they mentioned Bill in the previous one. We know that's where they're headed.
Yeah.
Um, and later on, I'll just say there is in the game after that section, there's a Pittsburgh section which doesn't have Bill in it anymore. And I think that they'll, without giving any more detail than that, I think my prediction is that they might roll those two together a little bit more. Not that that will happen, but that if they were going to change something and they wanted to, I'm just thinking because Nick Offerman's a pretty big actor.
Mm-hmm.
It would be if they're really going to dive into these two characters. I doubt they would just have this one episode. They fully go into these two characters, and then now we're not worrying about them anymore. I think it makes sense. Okay, well they might keep them around for an extra episode. That's just a possibility, though. Um, I do predict that, and I mean, if someone hasn't played the game, this won't give away much. I do think that the fall section will be over by the end of the fourth episode. That's
Mm,
a prediction I have.
okay, I have a prediction.
Sure.
I don't think they're going to get to Lincoln until the end of the third episode. Now you might be wondering why. I think they're going to be focusing like shoot, I don't know how to describe because they're going to have to do a lot more flashbacks. Um I think that Bill and Frank are going to have a lot more flashbacks. And I think that Joel and Tess are going to be in those flashbacks too. Because I don't know if you noticed, but like in the end,
Okay, yeah.
because in the second episode she says, take Ellie to Bill and Frank.
Mhm.
Now, in the game, you don't know who Frank is. You just have Joel say, like, we're going to a friend I know. And then like he kind of says it's Bill, when you're traveling with to Lincoln.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that she said that, it's like both Joel and Tess have an understanding of who he is and who Frank is, and they actually like have a backstory. And I think that half the episode's going to be revolving around that backstory, and then they're going to get to like Lincoln, or then maybe they get to Lincoln, but then it's like a bunch of backstory, and then they're going to like you're going to find out through like they could say like, oh, I like falling out or whatever, and then we're not going to say no spoilers. Something's going to happen, and it's going to be a significant emotional event, and I think that's how like the third episode is going to go.
Okay. I think that's I will be honest. I have one big fear that's been kind of put at bay
Why?
before the show. It's that the show will 10 episodes isn't enough for this game. Because remember you and I were talking about we were doing the math before, like a year ago, and we sort of looked at wait a minute, like how do we fit this game into 10 episodes? Like that kind of how does that
Mm-hmm.
work? And I do the math now with the pace
Oh,
they're
is it 10 episodes? Hold on.
episodes. Um, Here I'll look it up.
Here, no, it's okay. I'm looking it up. You keep going.
Yeah. Wait, how many? Nine?
Mm-mm.
Okay, nine then.
Wait, 3 and 4. Okay, okay. Never mind.
That's what I mean. So if there's nine
Mm,
episodes, nine there are four
damn.
seasons in the game. 9 divided by 4 is less than 2.5. Just keep that in mind. Um,
Something's
they
gonna have
won't.
to give.
Something's going to have to give, and I'm afraid of that. I liked it when they announced there were 10 because I did the math, and my prediction is that they will be done fall. In fact, not they will be. They have to be done fall by the end of episode 4. If they're not,
Okay.
then I'm going to be like, what? Like what are we cutting, boys? Like,
I
this
think.
thing.
Well, okay, but here's the thing. I think what you're missing something here, and I think one of the things is that this isn't gameplay, right? Gameplay takes a lot more, so the story can actually be condensed into like 6 hours.
Well, I will. I'm going to name cities off to you. Not spoil
Okay.
anything, but episode 3, Lincoln.
Yes.
Episode 4, Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Episode 5, Jackson.
Yes.
Episode 6, Col-
Winter. We're just gonna say Colorado winter. We're just gonna say, yeah.
I was going to say Colorado State University. Or do you think that could be rolled in episode 5? Uh,
Yeah. Well,
okay.
because you got to keep in mind it's going to be a cliffhanger when that event happens, and then we go into winter.
Okay. So that's what I was thinking. Episode 5 is going to be Jackson. Because in the game, that section of the game has two parts. There's the Jackson part, and then there's the Colorado State University part. Um, and then I was going to say, then I think so. With the math right now, episode 5 and 6 are both those sections, and then my prediction was 7 and 8 were going to be winter, and then 9 and 10.
I don't think you need 2 episodes for winter.
You think winter's one episode?
Yeah, because there's a significant event that's going to happen. You said in 5, right? Which is like where the transition, which is going to be a cliffhanger. I think they're not
Oh,
going to tell you what happens. It's going to be like winter's the next episode.
Oh, okay.
like kind of like how they do in the game, and then you're going to be traversing, Ellie, and that entire episode can be kind of like concluded,
Okay.
and then we're going to get into that's six, I think. Now,
Episode 8, we know, is the Left Behind DLC.
right? I forgot about that. That is kind of a mention, eh? Damn.
Which leaves episode 9 is all of spring.
Spring's not that long.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I know that a show is different than a game, but spring has two parts in the same way that
How
um,
does it have two parts?
I'll say there's a zombie part and a human part.
Zombie part
And
you don't need to focus on.
but I really like that because it was so
Yeah,
awesome.
you like that. Yeah,
It's just
okay,
so
but
awesome.
okay, yeah, the gameplay is like difficult to get through. That zombie part that we're not going to mention in too much detail. But
Nope.
what?
Can't get
What?
rid of the. I will
Wait. What? You can't get rid of it?
you there is an important story beat there that cannot easily be deleted. Um, they introduce a new character with a long neck, and there's just kind of a whole section there that's hard to cut out.
Wait,
Uh,
what?
I can't.
Oh my gosh. Dude, it doesn't take that long. It's just a view.
No, but I think there's an importance to maybe it can be rolled into.
Yes, it's important, and they already showed like features through toys in the beginning of the first two. Actually, within the first two episodes.
But what I think the importance of it is that you need to spend time. Yeah, we'll talk about when we come up to it. We will talk about when we come up to it.
Yeah, don't worry, everybody. We're gonna talk about it like closer to. No worries,
Um,
but yeah, continue.
yes, that's what I'm saying. I think I have reached the end of my Last of Us non-spoiler talk of that game because
Mm-hmm.
right now we're reaching into territory that if you've played the game, you understand the ciphers, but if you haven't, it just sounds like two crazy people
Yeah,
talking in secret code.
yeah.
Uh,
Here,
so
just give me 1 second. I'm just gonna take my sweater off. 1 second.
wait, that okay. I think there's
Sorry, what?
yeah. I was gonna say that being said, do you think it's time to wrap this podcast up now that we're
Um, yeah.
hour?
If you want to wrap it up, or unless you wanted to talk about Spider-Man, or you want to save that for another episode.
Let's save that for another episode. It feels like a good stopping point now that we've talked thoroughly about The Last of Us. Uh,
Yeah, I don't think there's a I don't think there's anything else to really say. I think that's kind of it.
I think we're in good shape. I think we've covered most of it until the next episode comes out.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. Which is going to be happening this Sunday, and I'm very excited. I can't wait. Also, I don't know if we're gonna make this. You want to make this like an every Tuesday thing, or do you want to make it every like what do you want to do? Or we're just gonna just do it ear by ear.
well, we'll figure this out when we're not on live broadcast, and we're not talking about schedules on live broadcast.
Oh
Uh,
yes, that's very true. Well, I'm just curious, like as like a again, we're just
I would
like this
like
is the first
I
one.
would like to come back on.
We'll come back to that,
Yeah,
but
I don't know
all
if I
right.
want to be like, oh yeah, no, just after my tennis lessons at the St. Andrews tennis. It's like maybe we leave that. Um, I just
No
noticed we
worries.
wear the same color shirt. Nice, but
Yeah,
anyways, yeah, I think we've pretty much covered it. Uh,
yeah.
awesome. Well,
Well,
yeah, looking forward to coming on again if I'm well.
yeah, man. Honestly, like, yeah, thank you for like so much for coming on to like the first podcast episode of the Triangle Button. Um, I'm I'm pretty ecstatic. I think this is gonna be like really be awesome, for us. But thank you so much for coming and sharing your insight based on The Last of Us. I can't wait to like have you on like next time. Other than that, for all of our listeners, you know, I hope you enjoyed this episode and the content. If you want to see anything more, I have a YouTube channel by the same name, the Triangle Button, in which I go over various like gameplays, and eventually we'll like put video essays as well as this podcast on various streaming services as well as this one. Other than that, I hope you all have a great day, and thank you once again, Caleb. Catch you on the next one.